The store went quiet the way a range goes quiet after the last round, when the sound is gone, but your ears keep waiting for it. I stood at the register with 3 things on the belt and a young staff sergeant in front of me who had stopped talking mid-sentence. A second earlier, he had owned the whole front of the exchange. His voice, his laugh, the space around him. Now he was looking down at my hand, and the color was leaving his face in a slow tide, from the jaw up, the way it does when a person understands something a beat before they can say it. There was a coin on the belt between us. It had turned over out of my palm when I reached for my wallet, and it lay there face up under the fluorescent light, the wing crest catching a small, hard shine. He was staring at it. His mouth had come open and nothing was coming out. Behind him, a younger airman had a hand on his sleeve. The kid had gone still too, but a different kind of still. He had said something low a moment before, 2 or 3 words, and whatever it was had reached the staff sergeant faster than anything I could have said. I was not in a hurry. I have been quiet in worse rooms than this one, rooms where the quiet meant something was about to come through the wire. And I learned a long time ago that hurry does not help you in a quiet room. So I picked my card back up off the counter where I had set it, and I looked at the cashier whose hands had stopped over the scanner, and I read the little laminated name tag pinned above her register. "Sorry, Ruby," I said. "Go ahead and ring me up." She blinked. She scanned the coffee. It beeped, and the beep was very loud. The staff sergeant said, "Chief." He said it so quietly I almost did not hear it. Then he said, "Ma'am, I did not know." I did not answer him yet. There was nothing I could have said in that moment that would have been the right size, and I have learned not to fill a silence just because it is uncomfortable. Let it be uncomfortable. Some silences are doing work. Ruby finished the other 2 items. She told me the total in a voice that wanted to apologize for the whole world. I paid. I put my card away. Then I reached down and picked up the coin off the belt, and I closed my hand around it, and the young sergeant flinched at the small motion like I had raised something at him. The automatic doors at the front of the store stood open on the parking lot, on the flat white afternoon light, on a row of ordinary cars and a flag on a pole across the lawn moving a little in the wind. I picked up my bag. I walked toward the light, and the store stayed behind me holding its breath. And not one person in that line understood yet how little of this had started at the counter. It had started 16 years before, at a gate on the other side of the world, and it had started that same morning at 0900 hours in an auditorium full of people who did know exactly who I was. Let me take you back to the morning. It matters more than the counter does. I put on the service dress for the last time before the sun was fully up. Dark blue coat, dark blue trousers, the silver and blue of my rank on the sleeves, 25 years of my life laid out in colored ribbons over the left breast in neat rows. I had worn a lot of uniforms, utilities gray with dust, body armor that left bruises, the OCP pattern the young ones wear now. But the service dress is the one you wear when the institution is going to say something out loud about you. And that morning the institution was going to say goodbye. They held it in the wing headquarters auditorium. Folding chairs, a stage, the colors posted at the back, the smell of coffee that is always in those rooms and never quite hot. A retirement ceremony is a strange thing. It is a funeral where the body walks out at the end and drives home. People stand up and tell stories about you while you sit in the front row and try to keep your face from doing anything you would be embarrassed to see later. I had been the command chief master sergeant of the wing for 2 years. Before that, I had been a chief for 3. Before that, I had been a lot of things, most of them at hours of the night when the base was asleep and somebody had to be awake and armed at the fence line. The senior enlisted leader of a wing is not a job you can explain to people who have not done it. You are the top of the enlisted force, several thousand airmen, and your whole authority runs on a thing you cannot see and cannot order, which is whether they believe you have earned the right to speak to them about who they are supposed to be. I had spent 25 years earning that, and in about 6 hours, I was going to hand it to a stranger in a base exchange and have him hand it right back, torn. Colonel Ann Sutter, the wing commander, spoke first. She is a good officer, which means she is a person who understands that the wing does not actually run on officers. She looked out at the room and she said the thing that made my throat tight, the only moment all morning that got past me. The wing runs on people who never needed to be seen, she said. People who did the work at 2 a.m. and let someone else stand in the photo. Chief Brandt, you were the best of them. You spent a career making sure the credit landed on other people. Let us have this one morning to put it where it belongs. Then they did the things you do. the shadow box with the folded flag and the rank insignia from every grade I had held. From Airman Basic up, the certificates, the Command Chief coin, the special one, the Wing's own, passed to my successor in front of everyone so the airmen would see the line of it continue, and one coin kept back and pressed into my hand, mine to keep, the reverse engraved because that is the tradition and because someone in the orderly room is always kinder than they have to be. I kept my composure through all of it. I have a good deal of practice. But there was an empty chair in the second row that I had asked them to reserve, and I looked at it exactly once and then I made myself stop. They call it a retirement. On the paperwork, it is a separation from active service. In the body, it felt more like setting something very heavy down after carrying it so long that the carrying had become the shape of my arms, and then standing there in the strange lightness, not sure what my arms were for. Afterward, there was cake, and there were handshakes, and there was a young airman, first assignment, who came up and said she had joined because of a speech I gave at her tech school graduation, and I had to go find a wall to stand near for a minute after that. A friend from my first squadron, retired herself now, had driven 3 states to be there, and she wanted a real photograph, the 2 of us in dress uniform. But the light in the auditorium was bad, and she said, let us do it later, this afternoon, somewhere with a window. So I stayed in the service dress. That is the only reason I was still in it at 1400 hours, walking into the base exchange with the ribbons on my chest, instead of in jeans like any sane retired person on the first afternoon of the rest of their life. I had exactly 3 things to buy. Coffee, because I was out. A birthday card, because my friend's birthday was that week, and I am the kind of person who still buys a paper card. And a small thing, a keychain shaped like a compass, because it was in a bin by the register, and it made me think of her, and it cost $4. 3 things. I want you to hold on to how small the errand was, because the size of a thing and the weight of a thing are not the same, and I have spent my whole life at the place where they come apart. I need to tell you about the gate now, not because I want to, because you cannot understand why I did what I did at that counter or why I did not do the other thing unless you know about the gate. It was the year 2010. I was a technical sergeant then, an E6, 27 years old, and I was security forces, which the Air Force calls defenders now, which is a good word for it. We are the ones who hold the fence. We are the police and the infantry, and the last thing between a base full of aircraft and mechanics and cooks and whoever wants to come through the wire. On a big installation, it is a thankless, invisible job. On a small forward operating base at the edge of a bad province, it is the whole ballgame. I had the entry control point, the gate, the single place a vehicle could come onto the base, which meant it was the single place the enemy wanted most, which meant it was mine and a handful of airmen's to hold, all day and all night, in the heat that came off the ground like a hand on your face. I had a young senior airman with me named Ellis Chapman. He was 20. He was from a small town in a flat state, and he was the kind of young troop who is so earnest it makes you afraid for him, because the world is not always kind to earnest. He wanted to be good at the job. He asked questions the other kids were too proud to ask. He kept a photograph of his mother in the pocket of his plate carrier, and when I told him regulations, he moved it to a different pocket and kept it anyway. And I let him, because there are rules and there are the reasons for rules, and a boy carrying his mother into a fight was not what the rule was for. The night it happened, it came the way those things come, which is all at once and out of an ordinary evening. There was a vehicle that would not stop. There was a shape in the tree line that turned out to be more than one shape. There was the first crack of it, and then there was no more time for anything but the next thing and the next thing. I am not going to give you the whole of that night. It is not yours, and it is not for a story. What you need to know is that I held the gate, that when it was the worst, I was where I was supposed to be, doing the job, and the airmen with me did the job, and the gate did not fall, and a base full of sleeping people woke up the next morning not knowing how close it had come, which is exactly how it is supposed to work. That is the whole point of us. If we do it right, no one ever knows there was anything to do. And what you need to know is that Ellis Chapman was 3 feet to my left, and then he was not, and I could not go to him until it was over, and by the time it was over, there was no use going. The last thing he said to me, there was a moment, early, before the worst of it, when I moved us to better cover and I was not sure he was still with me, and I called his name, and out of the dark I heard him say, "Right behind you, Chief!" That is what he said. Right behind you, Chief, 20 years old. He was right behind me the whole time. He was right behind me right up until he was not. They gave me the Silver Star for that night. Third highest thing the country gives for valor. There is a citation, and it uses careful, formal language about the gallantry of the actions. And it is accurate. Every word of it is accurate, and it is also the most incomplete document I have ever read, because nowhere in it does it say that I would give it back, that I would hand the star and the ribbon and the whole careful sentence of it across a table without a half-second of hesitation to have that boy drive home to his flat state and grow old and forget my name. The citation does not have a place for that. No citation does. There is a photograph from the ceremony where they pinned it. A general is leaning in, and I am standing at attention, and my face is doing the thing faces do at those moments, which is nothing, on purpose. I did not want that photograph taken. I have never displayed it. Chapman's mother was there, and afterwards she took both my hands and both of hers, and she did not say anything for a long time, and then she said thank you, and I have carried the specific weight of being thanked by her for 16 years. I went to the funeral before that, in the flat state, in a small church with a big flag out front. I wore the service dress, and I sat near the back because the front was for the family, and I watched them fold the flag over a coffin that held a boy who had said, right behind you into the dark, and meant it. There is a part of the ceremony where they present the flag to the next of kin, and the words the officer says are careful and old and worn smooth by too much use, on behalf of a grateful nation, and I have heard them more times than any person should, and every time they land like a hand on the sternum. His mother took the flag, the way you take a thing that is the wrong shape to hold, that no set of arms was ever built for, and she held it anyway, because that is what the mothers do. I decided something at that funeral, in the back pew, in my dress uniform, that I did not have words for yet, but that ran the rest of my career. I decided that the ribbons on my chest were a receipt, and that the debt on the receipt was not payable to me, and that I would spend whatever was left of my service making sure fewer mothers had to learn how to hold a folded flag. That is not a thing you can put in a citation. It is not a thing you can explain in a checkout line. It is just the engine that ran under everything after, quiet, where no stranger could see it. So here's what I learned, and it is the thing that will matter at the counter. I learned to let the ribbons sit quiet. I learned to let strangers look at a rack of valor devices on a woman's chest and think whatever they were going to think, because the truth of what those ribbons cost was not something I owed to a stranger's curiosity, and it was not something I was going to perform to satisfy anyone's doubt. The medals were not a trophy I had won. They were a debt I was still paying, and you do not flash a debt around. You just carry it quietly, and you let it make you into someone who holds the fence for other people's sleeping children. That is who walked into the base exchange at 1400 hours. Not a decorated hero on parade. A tired woman who had set something heavy down that morning and did not quite know what to do with her hands, buying coffee and a birthday card, wearing a debt on her chest that no one in that store could read. The base exchange on a stateside installation is one of the most ordinary places on earth. It is a department store that happens to sit inside a fence. There are aisles of snacks and phone chargers and off-brand cologne, and there is a food court that always smells like the same fried thing, and there are young airmen in it at all hours, buying energy drinks and arguing about nothing. I have spent a good part of my life in and around these buildings. They are the living room of a base. Whatever a base is actually feeling, you can find it in the exchange. I did not walk in looking for a fight. I want to be clear about that, not because I need you on my side, but because it is true, and the truth matters to me more than most things at this point. I walked in for coffee and a birthday card and a $4 compass. I was thinking about the light by the window my friend wanted for the photo. I was thinking about the empty afternoon in front of me and the emptier ones behind that, the strange new country of having nowhere I had to be. There were two young men near the front of the store by the registers, in OCPs, airmen. One was a staff sergeant, an E5, with the stripes on his chest and the swagger of a man who has just enough rank to be dangerous to himself. The other was younger, a senior airman, quieter, the kind who laughs a half second after the other one to make sure it is safe to. They were loud in the way that bored young troops are loud, filling the space because the space was there. I clocked them the way I have always clocked a room, automatically, the old habit, and then I put them out of my mind and went to find the coffee. I heard the staff sergeant before any of it was aimed at me. He was talking to the younger one about somebody they both knew, some airman who wore a ribbon he had supposedly not earned, and he said loud enough for a third of the store, "Bet half the racks in this place are bought online anyway. You can get anything online." I did not turn around. It was not about me. It was just noise, the kind of careless talk that young people make when they have not yet learned that the world is full of people carrying things they cannot see. I found the coffee. I found the birthday card, a good one, not a joke one. I picked up the compass keychain from the bin. I got in line. The line had 4 or 5 people in it. The 2 airmen were near the front. I took my place at the back of it, behind them, holding my 3 small things, thinking about a window and a photograph and a boy from a flat state. I did not think about the ribbons on my chest. I had stopped thinking about the ribbons on my chest a long time ago. That is what quiet carrying is. You forget you are doing it. The staff sergeant turned around to say something else to the younger one, and his eyes went across me the way eyes do in a line, and then they came back. I watched it happen on his face. I have watched it happen 1,000 times, on 1,000 faces, and I could have told you what he was thinking as clearly as if it were printed on him. He saw the service dress, he saw the ribbons, the whole rack of them, 3 rows, with the little devices on them that mean specific things, that mean valor, that mean wounds, that a person who knows the language can read like a sentence, and I watched him decide, in under a second, that it could not be real, that a woman standing behind him in a checkout line could not be wearing that sentence truthfully. It is a particular thing, that decision. I have thought about it a great deal, before that day and since. It is not quite the same as thinking someone is lying. It is more that some people cannot make the picture in front of them fit the picture in their head, and rather than change the picture in their head, they decide the one in front of them is fake. It is easier. It costs them nothing, and a young man with a little rank and an audience is exactly the kind of person who will decide it out loud. "Ma'am," he said, and he was smiling, and the smile was the worst part because the smile meant he thought this was going to be fun. "Ma'am, Halloween's over." The younger airman laughed the half-second laugh. "You hear me?" the staff sergeant said, louder, turning fully around now, giving the line the show. "Halloween's over. Ditch the fake medals." The store did the thing the store does. The nearest people went still. Not brave still, not about to intervene still, just still, the still of people who do not want to be involved and cannot stop watching. Ruby, at the register, stopped scanning, her hand frozen over a bag of somebody's groceries. The whole front of the exchange tilted its attention toward the little space where a young sergeant had decided to have some fun with a woman he had appointed a fraud. I have to tell you what came up in me first, because it is the honest thing, and because it is the whole reason this story is worth telling. What came up first was not anger. What came up first was the old reflex, the one I have had my whole life, the one a lot of us have, the reflex to make myself smaller, to smooth it over, to say something light and self-deprecating that would let him keep his fun and let me disappear, to give the room its comfort back at the cost of my own. Do not make a scene. Do not be the difficult one. Let it pass. I felt that reflex come up my spine like it always has, and I want you to understand the specific bitterness of feeling it right then. At 52 years of institutional authority, at the top of the enlisted force, 6 hours retired, with a silver star's worth of reason to stand exactly as tall as I was standing. I had spent a career, an entire career, teaching young airmen not to do that, not to shrink. I had sat across desks from young women in tears who had made themselves small in front of some loud man, and I had told them gently and then not gently that they were allowed to take up the space they had earned. And here was the same reflex in me, 16 years after the gate, still there, still whispering, still ready to hand this boy my dignity so he could keep his comfort. I did not say the small thing, but I did not say the large thing either. I want to be honest about the shape of it. I did not draw myself up and announce my rank and put him in his place. That would have been easy, and it would have felt good for about 4 seconds. And it would have been a kind of performance, too. A different one. Me handing him and the whole store the proof they had not earned the right to demand. I set my 3 things down on the belt. The coffee, the card, the little compass. I set them down without hurry, and I did not answer him. And the not answering, the calm of it, made him louder, the way it always does with that kind of man. He read my silence as fear. He read it as surrender. His smile got bigger. "No, seriously," he said, playing to the line now, half-turned so they could all enjoy him. "Where'd you get those? Costume shop? You know it's a felony, right? Wearing stuff you didn't earn? Real people earn those." He gestured at my chest with his chin. "Let me guess. You saw them in a movie." The younger airman, Vega, I would learn his name was Vega, had stopped laughing. I noticed that. He had gone quiet and he was looking at me now, really looking in a way the staff sergeant had not bothered to. But he did not say anything. He was young. and it is a hard thing to correct the loud man you came in with, and I did not hold his silence against him then, and I do not now. I made my decision in that space. It was not a dramatic decision. It did not feel like a turning point. It felt like the small, clear thing it was. I decided I was not going to hand him my life to hold. All of it. The gate and the boy and the star and the 16 years. That was mine. And it was Chapman's. And it was his mother's. And it was not going to become a thing I flashed at a stranger in a checkout line to win an argument I had not started. He had not earned the weight of it. Almost no one had. You do not get to demand a person's deepest thing just because you doubted them loudly enough. That is not how it works. That is not how any of it works. But I also was not going to let him think his version was the true one. There is a difference between not defending yourself and agreeing with the man attacking you. I was not going to leave that store, having let a young sergeant believe he had correctly identified a fraud. Not because I needed to win, because he was one of mine, whether he knew it or not. And I had spent 25 years unable to let one of mine walk away from being that wrong about a person. So I looked at him. I looked at him the way you look at a young troop who has stepped in something he does not yet understand the size of. Not angry, level, a little tired, and I said the only thing I said to him in that whole exchange before it turned, and I said it quietly, so he had to stop talking to hear it. "Son," I said, "I hope you never learn what these cost." He blinked. It was not what he expected. It was not a defense, and it was not a threat, and it did not give him anything to push against. For a second, I saw him try to find the joke in it and fail, and into that second, into that small crack of uncertainty on his face, I reached down for my wallet because whatever else was happening, I still had 3 things on a belt and a cashier waiting, and I have never in my life let a scene stop me from finishing the ordinary task in front of me. My keys came up out of my coat pocket with the wallet, the way keys do, tangled in the strap, and the coin came up with them. It came up with them and it slipped, and it turned over once in the air, and it landed face up on the rubber belt between us, and it caught the light. I did not plan for the coin to fall. I want to be clear about that too. If I had planned it, that would have been a performance, the exact thing I had just decided not to do. It fell because keys are keys, and coats are coats, and my hands that whole day had not been sure what they were holding. It fell by accident, the way the most important things in a life so often arrive, sideways and unbidden, out of a coat pocket on an ordinary afternoon. But it fell, and it landed face up. And a challenge coin is not a subtle object. It is heavy, and it is deliberate, and every person who has worn the uniform knows in their bones what one is, and roughly what it costs to be handed one. And this was not a unit coin, or a morale coin, or the kind of thing they hand out by the boxful. This was the command chief's coin of the wing crest on the face, the words around the edge, the specific, unmistakable object that says the person carrying it is, or was until 0900 that morning, the senior enlisted leader of every airman on that installation, including the 2 standing in front of me. The younger one, Vega, saw it first. I watched his eyes drop to the belt, and I watched them stop, and I watched his whole body change. He knew exactly what it was. You could see him reading it and rereading it, the crest and the words, and then you could see him do the arithmetic, the fast, terrible arithmetic of a young man realizing that the woman his buddy has spent 2 minutes calling a fraud in a public store is holding the coin of the single most senior enlisted person on the base. His hand shot out and closed on the staff sergeant's sleeve. He said something low. I was close enough to hear it, though the sergeant, I think, felt it before he heard it. "Wade," Vega said. "Wade. That's the command chief." The staff sergeant, Corliss, did not understand at first. He looked at Vega, annoyed at the interruption, still riding the last of his own momentum. Then he followed Vega's eyes down to the belt, and he saw the coin, and I watched the whole thing come apart on his face in stages, like a building coming down floor by floor. First he read the coin. I saw the moment his eyes found the crest and the words and understood the object for what it was. Then, and only then, for the first time in the entire encounter, he actually looked at my face. He had not looked at my face once. He had looked at the ribbons, at the costume he had decided they were, at the show he was putting on for the line, but he had never once looked at the actual woman standing in front of him, because a person you have decided is a fraud does not have a face. They only have the thing you have caught them at. Now he looked, and then his eyes went, at last, to the silver and blue rank on my sleeves, the rank he had never bothered to check, the rank that had been there the entire time, plain as daylight, the rank of a chief master sergeant, an E9, the top of his own enlisted force. He had spent 5 minutes deciding who I was. It took him about one to learn. His hand started to shake. It was not a small tremor. It came up from somewhere deep, and it took his hands, and it would not let them go. And he put one of them flat on the counter as if to steady it, and that did not help. And I watched a young man understand, all at once and all the way down, that he had just done the single most damaging thing to his own career that a person in his position can do, and that he had done it loudly, in public, with witnesses, to a woman who had every reason and every right to end him for it. That is the image the whole thing had opened on, the one I showed you at the start. The silent store, the coin on the belt, his shaking hands, his face gone the color of ash. I showed it to you first so you would know that this was where it was always going. But I wanted you to arrive at it the way he did, from inside the certainty that came before, so you could feel how far a person can fall in the space of a heartbeat when the picture in their head finally breaks against the picture in front of them. "Chief," he said. His voice had lost all its size. "Ma'am, I did not know." And there it was, the truest thing he had said. I did not know. That is the whole of it, is it not? That is the whole of every one of these. I did not know, said by a person who had been perfectly willing to decide, out loud, in front of strangers, without knowing. The not knowing had never stopped him. It had only ever been the doubt that stopped, once the truth got loud enough to force it. I let the silence sit a moment longer, not to punish him, though I will not pretend there was nothing in me that noticed the justice of it. I let it sit because the silence was doing work, and because I have never believed in stepping on a moment that is already saying everything that needs to be said. Then I did what I had decided to do before any of this turned. I picked the coin up off the belt. He flinched again at the motion. I closed my hand around it. And I finished buying my coffee and my birthday card and my $4 compass because those 3 small things were the actual reason I had come, and I was not going to let a young man's bad afternoon rob me of my errand. "Go ahead and ring me up, Ruby Tess," I said. And she did, with hands that were not entirely steady either, and she told me the total, and I paid. And the whole time Corliss stood there with his hands flat on the counter and his career draining out of him, and no idea in the world what to do with his body. Here is the part I think about most. In that moment, I had all the power there is in a situation like that. I could have said his rank and his name and told him exactly what was going to happen to him. I could have turned to the line and made a speech about respect and stolen valor and what those devices actually mean, and every person in that store would have nodded, and Corliss would have stood there and taken it, because he had earned it, and he knew he had earned it. It would have been correct. It would have been satisfying. And it would have been me, on the last afternoon of my career, using the last of my authority to make a young man as small as he had tried to make me. I did not want it. I was surprised, standing there, by how much I did not want it. I had thought in some abstract way, on the days I had imagined a moment like this, that it would feel like winning. It did not feel like winning. It felt like standing at the gate again, holding a thing I had not asked to hold, knowing that what I did next would decide who somebody got to become, because he was one of mine. That is the thing I could not get around, even 6 hours retired, even with the ash on his face and the shake in his hands. Some loud, careless, unformed young sergeant who had never been taught, or had been taught and had not listened, was still one of mine, still an airman of a wing I had given my life to, and I had never once in 25 years been able to walk away from one of mine at the exact moment the lesson was landing. That is not mercy, exactly. It is closer to responsibility. It is the thing that does not switch off when they hand you the shadow box. So I did not break him. I picked up my bag, and as I turned to go, I stopped, and I looked at him one more time, and I gave him the only sentence that afternoon that I actually chose for him, weighed and chose, the way you choose words for someone whose whole life just tilted. "You did not look at my face," I said. "Not once. You decided who I was without ever looking at me. Whatever else you take from today, take that. Look at people. It is the entire job." He nodded. He could not speak. His eyes had gone wet, and he was fighting it with everything he had, the way young men do, which never works and only makes it plainer. And I walked toward the open doors and the flat afternoon light, and the store let out its breath behind me. I did not quite make it to the doors. A man came in through them as I was going out, and we did the small sideways dance 2 people do in a doorway, and then he stopped, because he knew me. His name was Marcus Odell. He was a first sergeant, the kind of senior NCO the airmen call the shirt, the one whose entire job is the care and discipline of the people in a squadron. I had worked with him for 2 years. He was good at the hardest job in the building, which is holding people accountable and holding them up at the same time, often in the same conversation. "Chief," he said, and his face did the thing a good first sergeant's face does, which is take in the whole room in one pass. He saw me. He saw that I had my bag and I was leaving. And then he saw, past me, the frozen tableau at the register, the ash-faced staff sergeant with his hands on the counter, the cashier not moving, the line full of people wearing the specific expression of people who have just watched something and are deciding what they saw. "Congratulations this morning," Odell said to me, and he meant it, and for a half second his face was just warm. I couldn't get away for the ceremony. I heard the colonel's remarks were something. "They were kind," I said. He looked past me again, longer this time. When he looked back at me, the warmth had a question under it. First sergeants can read a room the way I can read a ribbon rack. He knew without a word that something had happened, and he had a fair guess at the shape of it, and he was giving me the chance to tell him or not tell him, whichever I wanted. I have thought a great deal about what I did next, because it was the real decision, the one that mattered more than any speech I could have made at the counter. I told him the truth, just the truth. Not dressed up, not sharpened, not softened. "You're Sergeant Corliss over there," I said quietly, so it stayed between us. Spent a couple of minutes telling the store my medals were fake, called it a costume, told the line I'd get them at a shop. I paused. Then my coin fell out of my pocket, and he found out who I was. He's had a bad 2 minutes. I'd say he's about to have a worse month, and I think that's his own doing, not mine. Odell's jaw set. I watched him feel the anger, the particular anger a good leader feels when one of his people has embarrassed the uniform, and I watched him put it where it belonged, which is away, to be used cold and later, not hot and now. "I'm sorry, Chief," he said. "On behalf of the squadron. That should never have touched you. Not you, not anybody." "It did not touch me the way he wanted it to," I said. "I've been called worse by better, but he needs to hear it from someone who is not me, and I think it lands harder coming from his own shirt than from a chief he's never going to see again." "It'll land," Odell said. There was no heat in it, which is how I knew it was serious. Heat is for show. The quiet ones are the ones who follow through. "Would you give me a minute with him now, or would you rather I handle it away from you?" "Handle it away from me," I said. "I don't want to watch, and I don't want him performing an apology at me in a store to make himself feel better. If he's sorry, let him be sorry to the institution, and let it change how he treats the next person he decides he's better than. That's the only apology I have any use for." Odell nodded. He understood exactly. Then he walked past me into the store, and I heard him say, in a voice pitched to carry just far enough and no farther, "Sergeant Corliss, wait for me by my truck. Now." I did not turn around to watch Corliss peel himself off the counter and walk out with his career in his hands. I had seen enough young people learn hard lessons to know what it looks like, and I did not need to collect the image. I went out through the doors, into the light, but I will tell you what I found out later, from Odell, because it matters to how this ends. Corliss did not try to run from it. That is the one thing I will give him. When Odell got to the truck, Corliss was already standing there, and the first thing he said, before Odell could say anything, was that he did not want anyone to make it smaller than it was, that he had been wrong out loud, and he wanted it on the record that he knew it. A younger man, a weaker man, would have started building the excuse right there in the parking lot. Corliss did not. Whatever else he was not a coward about the one thing that was actually his to own. That did not fix it. It should not fix it. You do not get credit for admitting a thing you did in front of 40 witnesses, but it told me something about who he might become, if the lesson took, and I found that I cared about that more than I cared about the satisfaction of his ruin. That is the strange arithmetic of having led people for a long time. You lose the taste for breaking them. You start measuring everything by whether it will make the next version of them better than this one. I sat in my car in the exchange parking lot for a while before I started it. I put the bag on the passenger seat. The coffee I had bought was the ground kind, for home, so there was no hot cup to hold, which was a small disappointment because, on an afternoon like that, a person wants something warm to hold. I held the coin instead. I turned it over in my fingers the way I had 1,000 times, feeling the raised crest on the face and the engraving on the reverse. I want to tell you what the accusation actually did to me, because it was not what you might think, and it is the real cost of the day, the part the coin and the shaking hands do not show. He called the medals fake. And the strange thing, the thing I did not expect, is that the part of it that got under my skin was not the insult to me. I have been underestimated my whole career. I was a woman in security forces in an era that was not sure it wanted me there. I have been mistaken for the spouse, for the admin, for the lost civilian, for the help, more times than I could count, and I made a kind of peace with that a long time ago, the peace you make with weather. A young sergeant deciding I was a fraud was just weather. It would have rolled off me by the time I got home. What got under my skin was Chapman, because those are not only my medals. That is the thing I could never have made Corliss understand in a checkout line, the thing that is not sayable in that setting to that person. The silver star on my chest is as much that boy's as it is mine. It is his mother's. It is the specific weight of a 20-year-old saying right behind you, Chief, into the dark, and meaning it, and being right behind me and dying there. When a stranger points at that ribbon and calls it a costume, he is not just calling me a liar. He is, without knowing it, without any way of knowing it, waving his hand through the last visible trace of a boy he never met and calling it nothing, calling it a thing I bought online. And I could not explain that to him, and I would not have wanted to, because Chapman is not a card I play to win an argument. But I sat in the car, and I felt it, the old grief with a fresh bruise on it, and I let myself feel it, because the alternative is to stop feeling it, and I am not willing to stop. Being believed felt smaller than I expected. That is the honest report from the parking lot. I had, somewhere in me, imagined that a moment like that, the moment the doubter learns the truth, would feel like vindication, like a warm thing filling a cold space. It did not. The truth surfacing did not bring Chapman back. It did not lighten the debt. It just moved a young man from one kind of wrong to another kind of understanding and left me exactly where I have always been, which is holding a heavy thing quietly and missing someone. There was a knock on my window. Soft. A knuckle. Tentative. It was the younger one. Vega. He had come out of the store and found my car, which meant he had gone looking for it, which meant he had chosen to do a hard thing that no one had told him to do. I rolled the window down. "Chief," he said, "I'm sorry. I just wanted to say I'm sorry. Not for him. I mean, for him too, but for me. I saw the ribbons when you got in line. I saw them. And I didn't say anything to him, and I should have. Before it ever got started, I let it happen because it was easier." I looked at him. He was very young, 21, 22. He had the face of a kid who had not yet forgiven himself and was not going to for a while. "How old are you, Airman?" I asked. 22, Chief." "You know what I did at 22? I said. "I stood in a lot of rooms and let a lot of loud men say a lot of things I knew were wrong because it was easier and because I did not yet know that easier is a debt you pay later with interest. You are learning that today. You are learning it about 4 years earlier than I did. That is not nothing." He swallowed. I still should have said something. "Yes," I said. "You should have. And now you know the exact size of the regret you feel when you don't. Carry that. Next time it will be louder than the fear, and you will say the thing. That is how it works. Nobody is born brave in a checkout line. You get there one regret at a time." He nodded. His eyes were doing the same thing Corliss's had done. I almost let him go. But there was one more thing, and it was the thing I actually wished I could say to Corliss, and could not, because he was not ready to hear it, and Vega was. And sometimes you give the words to the person who can carry them rather than the person they were meant for. "The devices on those ribbons," I said. "The little ones that mean valor. You want to know the secret of them? Every single one of them has somebody's name on the back that you can't see, not engraved, just there. Nobody earns one alone. There is always someone who is right behind you or right in front of you, who is the reason you are standing there to get it pinned on. When you see a rack like this on somebody someday, that is what you are looking at. Not what they did, who they were carrying. Now you know. Go on." He stepped back from the car. He came to attention, which he did not have to do, which nobody had ordered, and he held a salute, and I am retired and out of uniform protocol in a parking lot, and none of it was required, and I returned it anyway, because some salutes are not about the regulation. Then he turned and walked back toward the store, a little straighter than he had walked out, and I started my car. The photograph with my friend happened after all, later that week, by a window with good light. We stand there in our dress uniforms, two women who gave the whole of their adult lives to a thing that will forget most of what we did, smiling, because we are still here, and a lot of people we loved are not, and that is reason enough to smile. It is a good photograph. It is the one I display, not the one with the general leaning in. This one. A few days after the exchange, Odell called me. He is the kind of man who closes a loop even when no one is making him. He told me what had happened to Corliss, which was about what should happen. It was handled at the squadron, firmly, on the record, in a way that would follow the young man for a while and teach him something and not end him, which is the correct outcome for a first serious wrong by a person who owned it. I did not ask for the details, and Odell did not offer many. That was his to carry now, and his chains, not mine. I had set that particular weight down in the doorway of the store, and I meant to leave it there. But I did ask Odell to pass along 2 lines from me. I had thought about them for a couple of days, which is a long time to think about 2 lines, and I want to tell you what they were, because they are the shape of the whole thing. The first line was that I did not want him crushed, that whatever the squadron did, I hoped it was aimed at teaching him, and not at breaking him, because a broken sergeant helps no one, and a taught one might someday be worth something to the airmen under him. I meant that. Mercy is not the same as letting it go. I had not let it go. I had made sure it would cost him, through the proper machinery, the right things. But the point of the cost was to build something, not to destroy something, and I wanted that on the record too. The second line was a request. I asked Odell to tell Corliss to go and learn whose name was on the back of a Valor device. Not mine. Anyone's. To go find one veteran, any veteran, and ask them who they were carrying and to listen to the answer. Because the thing he had actually done, the real wrong under the loud one, was not that he doubted me. It was that he looked at a symbol of the worst and best night of someone's life and saw a costume. He looked at a debt and saw a trophy. And the only cure for that, the only one I have ever found, is to make a person sit down across from the weight and hear what it actually is. Odell called me back a week after that. He said Corliss had asked him to tell me it would not happen again, and Odell said he had told Corliss, in reply, that not doing it again was the low bar, the floor, the least a person could manage, and that the actual assignment was to become someone who caught himself before the loud thing left his mouth. And then someday, to be the one who steps in when someone else's loud thing is about to. I could not have said it better. That is why he is a first sergeant and I got to go home. I went home. That is the part no one prepares you for, the going home, the first week of a life with no formation to stand in and no fence to hold and no young troops coming to your door with problems the size of the whole world. My arms did not know what to do. I told you that at the start. It was true for longer than I expected. I hung the shadow box on the wall of my study, the folded flag and the row of rank from Airman Basic all the way up to the Chief's stripes with the star and the wreath, and below it on the shelf, I set 2 things next to each other. I set the Command Chief coin, the one they kept back for me, the one that fell on the belt and ended a young man's bad afternoon, and next to it I set the one photograph I have of Ellis Chapman, the one his mother sent me a copy of years ago, a 20-year-old grinning in front of a truck in a flat brown place, squinting into a sun that is long set now, and I understood finally standing there what the empty chair at the ceremony had been for. I had reserved it that morning without letting myself say the reason, the way you do a thing your heart knows before your mouth will agree to it. It was for him. It had always been for him. 25 years of service, and the person I most wanted in the room to see me set the weight down was a boy who had been right behind me at a gate in the year 2010 and never got to set anything down at all. I stood in my quiet house with my arms that did not know what to hold, and I found to my surprise that they could hold this, the coin and the photograph, the debt and the grief, the medals that are not a costume and are not a trophy and are not, it turns out, entirely mine. I could hold all of it. It is heavy. I have always been able to carry heavy things quietly. That is the one thing the whole career was, under all the ranks and the ribbons, a person who could carry a heavy thing quietly and keep her feet and hold the fence so other people could sleep. I went back to the exchange about 2 weeks later. I want to tell you about that because it is a small thing, and small things are usually where the real repair happens. I went back because I needed coffee again, the ordinary reason, and because I was not going to let a 2-minute encounter turn a building I had walked through for years into a place I avoided. That is a trap, and I have watched it swallow people. Something bad happens to you in a place, and the place becomes the thing that happened, and you rearrange your whole life to root around it, and the person who wronged you ends up owning a piece of your map that they never earned. I was not going to hand Corliss a corner of the base, so I put on my civilian clothes, jeans, and a plain coat, no ribbons, no rank, nothing to read wrong or right, and I drove over and I walked in. It was ordinary. That was the whole point of it and the whole relief of it. Nobody looked at me twice. I was just a woman in her 40s buying coffee, which is what I am now, which is a thing I am still getting used to being. The same fried smell from the food court, the same young airmen buying the same energy drinks. The line moved. I paid. Ruby was not working that afternoon, but I had left a note for her the first week, a short one, thanking her for finishing my sale with steady enough hands, because she had been caught in the middle of something that was not hers, and she had kept her dignity in it, and that deserved to be said. While I was in line, in my jeans, invisible, I watched a young airman 2 registers over drop a whole basket of things, cans rolling everywhere, his face going red the way young faces do when they are sure the entire world is watching them fail. And a staff sergeant near him bent down without a word and started picking cans up with him, fast, easy, no comment, turning a small humiliation back into a nothing before it could set. I do not know that staff sergeant. It was not Corliss. I want to be careful not to tie a bow on this that the world did not actually tie. But I stood there in my ordinary clothes, and I watched one young leader instinctively step toward another person's small bad moment instead of standing back to enjoy it. And I thought, that is the entire thing I spent 25 years on. Not the medals, not the gate even, though the gate is the price I paid for the right to say it. Just that. People stepping toward each other's bad moments instead of away. A wing full of that is a wing that will hold. A country full of it is a country that will hold. I bought my coffee, and I drove home, and I did not feel vindicated, exactly, but I felt something quieter and more useful than vindication. I felt like the building was mine again, like the ordinary afternoon was mine again, like a young sergeant's bad 2 minutes had cost him what it cost him and had not, in the end, been permitted to cost me anything at all, because I had gone back and taken the place back and refused the trap. That is a kind of winning that does not look like winning. It is the only kind I have ever fully trusted. The weeks after settled the way weeks do. I learned to make my own coffee at home instead of drinking whatever was in the pot at the wing. I found out that a person can, in fact, sit on a porch in the middle of a Tuesday and that the world does not end. My friend and I framed the photograph. Chapman's mother and I talked on the phone the way we do a few times a year, and I did not tell her about the exchange, because it would have only hurt her, and she has been hurt enough for 3 lifetimes, and there are truths you carry precisely, so the people you love do not have to. I did not hear from Corliss directly, and I did not expect to, and I did not want a note or a message from him because a note would have been for him, a way to feel better, and I was not interested in helping him feel better. I was interested in whether he would be different. I will probably never know. That is the ordinary way of these things. You almost never get to see whether the lesson took. You just do the best you can with the moment you are given, and you let the person walk off into a life you will not get to watch, and you hope. Leading people is mostly hope, in the end, dressed up in procedure. But I have thought a great deal since that afternoon about the 2 minutes at the counter, and about all the counters, all the lines, all the rooms where a person gets measured by a stranger and found wanting on sight. And I want to talk to you now, whoever you are, because I suspect you have stood in one. Maybe you were not wearing medals. Most people are not. But you were wearing something a stranger decided to read wrong. Your age, your face, your accent. The clothes you had on, or the neighborhood you came from, or the way your body moves through the world. Somebody looked at you for less than a second and decided they knew the whole of you, and they were confident about it, and they may even have said it out loud. And you felt that old reflex come up your spine, the one that says, make yourself smaller, smooth it over, give them their comfort back at the cost of your own. I want to tell you what I learned at that counter, retired 6 hours at the top of a career, still fighting that same reflex I had been fighting my whole life. Because if I was still fighting it, you can stop being surprised that you are still fighting yours. It does not go away because you get old, or senior, or accomplished, or right. It just gets quieter, and you get better at not obeying it. Here is the first thing. You do not owe them the weight of your life. When a stranger doubts you, the instinct is to prove it, to pour out your whole story on the counter between you, every hard thing you have carried, and make them see. Do not. Your story is not evidence in a trial a stranger convened without your consent. The gate I held, the boy I lost, the 16 years I carried it. That was never Corliss's to demand, and it was never mine to spend proving a point in a checkout line. The most valuable things you carry are the ones you never have to justify to the people who did not earn the right to ask. Keep them. Carry them quietly. Let them make you into the kind of person who holds the fence for other people, which is a far better use of them than winning an argument. Here is the second thing, and it sits strangely next to the first, but both are true. Not defending yourself is not the same as agreeing with them. You can decline to perform your whole life for a stranger and still refuse to let their version stand as the truth. You can look a person in the eye, level and unhurried, and let them find out that the calm they mistook for surrender was something else entirely. The truth does not need you to shout it. It does not need a speech or a scene or a coin falling out of a pocket, though a coin falling out of a pocket does concentrate the mind. The truth mostly just needs you to stop shrinking, to stand exactly as tall as the thing you have actually carried, and to let the world catch up to you in its own time. It always does. It is slower than you want, and it arrives sideways. But it always does. And here's the last thing. The one I gave to a 22-year-old through a car window because he was the one who could carry it. Look at people. Actually look. The whole wrong that started at that counter was not that a young man doubted me. It was that he never once looked at my face. He looked at the costume he had decided I was wearing, and he never looked at the person wearing it, and everything ugly that afternoon flowed from that one failure. Most of the cruelty in this world is not hatred. It is that. It is people deciding who you are before they have looked at you, and then never bothering to look. Do not be that. When someone is in front of you, look at them. See the actual person and not the story you arrived with about them. It costs nothing, and it is the entire job. It is the whole of it. It is what I spent 25 years trying to teach, and it fits, it turns out, on the back of a coin, in a space too small to hold a name, where the name goes anyway. I carry a coin and a photograph on a shelf now. A crest and a boy, the debt and the reason for it. If you have ever been decided about, measured and dismissed by someone who never looked at you, I hope you will do what I finally learned to do. Set down what is not yours to carry, keep what is, stand up straight in it, and let the truth stand on its own. It always does. It just takes its time, and it comes in through the door when you have half given up on it, out of a coat pocket on an ordinary afternoon, and it lands face up in the light.